Hey, hey, hey. Happy Thursday. Come on in. Pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch, brought to you by, interestingly enough, thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. And even more interestingly enough, all throughout the month of September and into October, we are sponsored by Roll for Combat and their Battle Zoo Bestiary Elemental Storm Kickstarter, which I will be talking about in just a few moments. So welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Thursday, September 26th, 2024. This is live stream 1105. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out, super casual. Just hang around talking about the latest in tabletop gaming news. Then I will usually pontificate about a topic related to our hobby. And tonight we're doing a bit of a double dip because it is going to be our September AMA, our Ask Me Anything. And then I'm also going to wrap up my role-playing game story time as I finish the tale of Mike the Zombie from my 1980s massive Nyarlathotep Call of Cthulhu campaign. Past couple of weeks, I've been sharing some stories about just kind of how I run role-playing games and how I really haven't changed much as far as how I run role-playing games. So there is that. There is that. So, anyway, should point out, this is, once again, just hanging out, having fun. We're not engaged in rocket surgery or anything along those lines. Just goofing off for the most part. Now, of course, should point out, too, that when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, you should stop on by thegaminggang.com for all the latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. In fact, just, this morning, we had the review of the final chapter of the Curtain Call adventure path for Pathfinder, Bring the House Down. Sammy's review of that is up. So now you can find out how are all three chapters of that operatic adventure path. So very nice, very nice. Also, this is a live show. So if you happen to be watching live, there is chat available. It's not on screen. It's one of the ways I keep some of the more unusual commenters at bay. And you must be a subscriber to the channel for at least 10 minutes in order to take part in chat. So if you check both of those boxes and you want to say howdy, maybe you got a question, a comment, by all means, if you want to toss in a question for the AMA, hold on until after we finish our brief intermission, and then we can get down to brass tacks with that as well. So let's see. Who do we have in chat here tonight? First out the gates is our good friend of the show, the Madman. Melwinius from York is with us, as is W. Forge, Semper Buffo, Glewin RX, Beat Cafe. Let's see. Who else? Mike. W. Forge, Russell Higgins, Michael Chad, Lord Cost 2000, and Stephen from Roll for Combat. So before we jump on in and start talking about that Roll for Combat Kickstarter, W. Forge says Roll for Combat is saying that the 2000 Well, it says 2014 is underselling for D&D. I think WForge might mean the 2024 book. But WForge says that they find Stephen from Roll for Combat's numbers fishy. Well. Dropping accusations here. I don't know. Are you accusing clickbait Stephen of... Hey, come on. Stephen even admits it's like, yeah, his titles are clickbaity. So Stephen from Roll for Combat says that their numbers come from BookScan. They're considered the standard for book sales reporting. Because I know there are stories floating around out there. In fact, I think, what's it, N-World just tossed an article out there saying that the player's handbook for 2024 Dungeons and Dragons, 5.5 is selling like 3 times as many copies as the 2014 5th edition player's handbook. I don't know. I can't tell you if that's true or not. Although, strangely enough, with as many people bitching and complaining about the 2024 book, I'd be kind of surprised it would be selling 3 times as many. I don't know. I mean, granted, yes, I do understand the popularity of Dungeons and Dragons is greater than it was in 2014. You said 3 times as great? I don't know. Can't tell you. I can't tell you. People out there think that, I hate Wizards of the Coast. I hate Dungeons and Dragons. I hate 5e and 5.5 and all that. I don't hate anything. Would I run Dungeons and Dragons? Probably not. If my players were like, hey, Jeff, we really want to play Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, I would. I wouldn't run it as written, but that's how I am anyway. So there is that. 245 Trioxin's with us in chat, as is Chris Lundgren. Kevin King's popping on in. Steven says they reported that, but they didn't say what sold. Hence, they're assuming it's including online sales as well. That is a possibility. Kochansky is popping on into chat. I believe it might be a first-time visit in chat. So Russell Higgins says, I don't hate WotC. I'm just not going to buy any of their products. Yeah, nobody's making you. Yeah, I certainly am not going to twist anybody's arms. And in fact, I guess I've raised a little bit of a ruckus with my review of The Order of the Stone for a Call of Cthulhu. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But all throughout this month, and of course into next month, the Gaming Gang Dispatch is sponsored by, yes, you heard me correctly when I opened the show by saying our sponsor is the aforementioned Stevens Roll for Combat. That's right. And their current Kickstarter, which last I looked is beyond 1,500% funded, for Battle Zoo Bestiary, Elemental Storm. Deliver a fresh and exciting experience and keep players guessing with over 170 new elemental monsters that channel the power of 20 unique elements, including classics like air, earth, fire, and water. Yeah, I'm not going to use that band joke. I've used it a couple of times already. As well as new elements like music, space, and time. Your players will never know what's coming. Now, these are award-winning monsters, but what does award-winning monsters actually mean? Each monster found within all of the Battle Zoo Bestiaries, including this one, were submitted to an open contest for new and aspiring monster designers. I am kind of curious. So once you get a monster design published in a Battle Zoo Bestiary, can you no longer enter into the contests? Because it's for new and aspiring designers, right? I wonder. Entries were judged in 2 rounds. First, all entries went through an open judging process where anyone, even people like me, could rank each monster based on a number of criteria. After that round was completed, the top monsters were selected, and then industry professionals scored the top entries on new criteria, producing copper, silver, gold, and platinum winners, as well as one grand prize winner, which was depicted on the cover. Not only did each winner get their monster depicted in this book, but each was awarded a cash prize. Fabulous prizes! Inside the book itself, next to each monster, you're going to see each winner's name and middle rank. So yes, each monster in these bestiaries is actually award-winning. The Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm is available in 2 flavors: 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder 2nd edition, and you can reserve a copy of the hardcover of your choice for a $60 pledge. If you want to just score the PDFs alone, or I should say PDF singular alone, you can do so for a $30 pledge through October 8th. And expected delivery is next spring for the Battlezoo Bestiary Elemental Storm. Ooh, what should I take a peek at tonight? Ooh. You're not allowed to see this because Stephen will yell at me if I show it to you. Yell at me. If I do something like this, he'll yell at me. So you still got time to back Elemental Storm from Roll for Combat. So there's some discussion going on about the sales for the Player's Handbook. To be honest, I would not be shocked if there is some fudging going on with the numbers, because that is not unusual. We see it all the time in the hobby. Great example is Origins Game Fair always loves to tell you that they had X number of attendees, and they didn't come anywhere close to that number of attendees. I am still curious about the other volumes that are coming out. I don't know if we're going to see them. I don't know what WotC thinks of me now that Greg Tito's gone. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll reach out to my contact at the PR company, see what he thinks. Don't know. Clean RX is flashing the book. Jeff touches the hot stove. Jeff pushes the shiny cherry red button. Madness. Lona's Cave is joining us in chat, as is Kevin R. Smith. See anybody else popping on in? Pete's Dracolich is with us tonight as well. Looks like we got a nice chat rocking and rolling. Sweet. Very nice. I didn't think we'd have a whole lot of people watching tonight because it's an AMA and it's also the finale of Role-Playing Game Story Time. And I'm not exactly going to be, dragging everybody in. But hey, you never know. Let's move on into the news, because arriving in November from Imagining Games is Chew, the role-playing game. Here's what I know. The award-winning Image comic book series and New York Times bestseller, Chew, is cooking for a game table near you. The foodie dark comedy about cops, crooks, cooks, cannibals, and clairvoyants is available for pre-order. Set in a world where chicken is illegal after a catastrophic outbreak of the bird flu killed over 100 million people, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is now the most powerful law enforcement agency on the planet. As a member of the Special Crimes Division, it's your job to investigate food crimes like chicken trafficking, egg dealing, and putting food-powered criminals behind bars. Imagining games is building out the popular fiction first game mechanics of Forged in the Dark to bring the action packed comic series of food crimes, over the top characters, and out of this world conspiracies to life. Play quirky characters in absurd situations. Engage with tense, over the top action scenes. Creatively describe solutions to any obstacle. Collaboratively create conspiracies with your friends. Solve outlandish cases with an abusive amount of legal authority. Balance your persistent personal trouble with the needs of the job. Take breaks when you should be working because, damn it, you're worth it. Can you balance the demands of your job and the needs of your family against the fate of the world? Sit down, dig in, and find out. The 460-page Chew the Role-Playing Game core rulebook hardcover is available for a pre-order price of $39. It's going to have an MSRP of $50. And the Chewniverse hardcover is available to pre-order at that same price. Right now, you can score the PDF over at Drive-Thru RPG for $19.99. Super interested. I know this was a judge's spotlight at this year's Any Awards. Here's what throws me off a little bit, though. So this kickstarted in, I want to say 2001. Has this been delayed that long? Or is this a new print run that's coming out? That's what I'm kind of up in the air with, because as an example, if you go to Drive-Thru RPG, the PDF is 460 pages. Now, we have seen Drive-Thru RPG get the page count wrong on PDFs. It happens probably more often than they'd like to admit. According to the pre-order, which, if I remember correctly, I think it's on Backer Kit, it's supposed to be 250 pages for the core book. So I don't know. I am curious. I am interested. I'm also curious, what is the page count on this? And then the Chewniverse book isn't available in PDF or on Drive-Thru RPG. So is that PDF both books? Can't tell you. But one thing I can tell you is I have read a few of the story arcs from the Image Comics series, and really good stuff. In fact, if I remember right, I thought it won some Eisner Awards at some point, or at least I know it was nominated for Eisner Awards. So very nice. Sarah D is with us tonight, hanging out in chat. So we have got a couple of our chat moderators with us. We've got the Madman and Sarah D keeping the peace. Sweet. Moon right along. The highly anticipated Broken Weave role-playing game is now available in stores from Cubicle 7 Games. Here's the scoop. Role-playing in a brand new post-apocalyptic tragic fantasy campaign setting for 5e. The weave unravels. The gods are dead, the lands are shattered, and the world has begun to forget what it once was. Time and distance have lost their meaning, and the knowledge of how things once were crumbles like ash. Those who remain struggle to survive in a shattered world overcome by decay. An entropic force which eats at our memories, reshapes the world, and twists people into nightmarish abominations. But all is not lost. Hope survives despite the odds. Community, love, and trust in one another can remake the world. Walking the old forgotten paths gives them permanence. Fractured artifacts from the time before spark memories of what once was, and communities gather to create a new way of life. Broken Weave is a tragic fantasy setting where hope and community are the only path to creating something new. Includes tragic characters, 6 new and unique character classes fit for the broken world, and a rich life path character creation system that builds a shared history between you, the other survivors, and your home haven. A strange and ever-changing world where magic is broken and god corpses litter the land. dozens of bizarre and beautiful locations to explore. It's a complete system for founding, growing, and protecting your community over generations with your havens. There's a host of nightmarish creatures and mechanics for converting any 5th edition monster to use in your Broken Weave campaign. There's new rules for harvesting monsters, travel, a host of new campcraft and downtime activities, and new mechanics for the corrupting force of decay and the flickering light of hope. This 304-page hardcover with PDF, if you happen to order from Cubicle 7 Games or one of their partners, carries an MSRP of $59.99, or you can grab just the PDF alone over at Drive-Thru RPG for $29.99. And I will tell you, you'll check out I'm not making you check it out, but you'll be able to check out my review of Broken Weave this weekend. I was going to share it last weekend, and some things came up, so I did not. But now that it is out in stores, I am going to share my review this weekend. It's done. It's in the can. So unless I reshoot it, because sometimes I do that too. But I will have that for you this weekend, and I will give you a little bit of a spoiler. I do like it. I do recommend it. Moving right along, now available in print over at Exalted Funeral, is the 2nd edition of They Feed on Fear. And I've got the skinny. There is something deeply rotten in this town. Beneath the white picket fences and worried smiles is a festering evil as people go missing and pets are mutilated. Where is this taking place? In Springfield, Ohio? They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. Come on, I had to go there. An evil that is growing as doors stayed locked and bolted. An evil has been feeding, growing, and taking people from their beds into the darkness of night. An evil that is ready to rear its ugly head again. An evil that grows hungrier and hungrier. It is nearly time to feed again. They Feed on Fear is a semi-cooperative, horror-themed narrative tabletop role-playing game. The players embody fear eaters, eldritch, interdimensional beings that feed on a form of human energy called essence. A fear eater's aim is to be the first to accumulate sufficient essence to achieve its end goal. One person assumes the role of the provider, the game master, and is in charge of describing the game's world, its inhabitants, and their responses to player actions. Unlike most role-playing games, the provider does not issue quests. Instead, players are the primary action initiators, determining their own path toward realizing their end goal. Both players and the provider participate in creating and introducing locations to a community. They Feed on Fear is about creating each fear eater's narrative, legend, and lore. The 111-page, 8-inch by 5.5-inch hardcover with PDF carries an MSRP of $40. And do want to point out, it is not available only in PDF, as far as I understand. Now, that might change, but as of this point, I only saw this is hardcover with PDF. Gleeman RX says this is definitely an Exalted Funeral game. Yes. Yes, I would say, yeah. I would say it fits that. This is actually a very cool, creepy image on this page, or this spread, I should say. Thought that was kind of cool. It's like, yeah, that's pretty nice. Hey, come on, it's spooky September. So, gotta share some horror stuff for you. And this looks pretty spooky. On to our next news piece, now available in print and PDF, is the GM's Miscellany Monstrous Delves. I've got the latest from Raging Swan Press. So often in our games, the tribes of evil humanoids the characters encounter are reduced to nothing more than flavorless and bland, faceless foes destined to fall before the hero's might. This compilation changes that by presenting 8 richly detailed tribes along with their lair, designed to be easily integrated into your campaign with a minimum effort and fuss. All you need to do is add the monster stats and their treasure. GM's Miscellany Monstrous Delves comprises the following tribes: Orcs of the Flayed Skull, Goblins of the Death Rune, Gnolls of the Bleached Skull, Hobgoblins of the Mailed Fist, Bugbears of the Frozen Tears, Orcs of the Severed Hand, and Lizard Folk of the Coiled Serpent. A monstrous dive is not a proper adventure. Rather, it's a starting point for your creativity. Raging Swan provides a flavorsome overview of the delve and the monsters therein. You provide their stats and their treasure and pick a suitable adventure hook to draw the characters to that place. Monsters Delves are designed so that you can add them to your campaign with a minimum of fuss. Have the characters got lost, deliberately or accidentally? Have they decided to explore an area of wilderness you've yet to detail? Do you need a sidetrack or diversion? Simply drop a Monsters Delve in their path. Now, Monsters Delves are also system neutral. However, it's impossible to avoid all game references, so a few generic terms such as elf, orc, fighter, and cleric appear in the text. You can modify these as necessary to suit your game and campaign world. The 70-page softcover with PDF can be had over at Drive-Thru RPG for $15.99. Or if you want to just grab the PDF alone, you can do so for $11.99. Cool. I like the artwork too. I gotta say, one of these days, I've got to try to check out some Raging Swan stuff because it looks pretty good. Looks pretty cool. And whenever I share news of Raging Swan releases, they always pique my interest. I'm always like, hey, well. Funny enough, $15.99 for a 70-page hardcover with the PDF. Not a bad deal, seeing that the PDF alone is $11.99. Not too shabby. Not too shabby. Maddie C is with us, as is Cronerios. So it looks like chat's rocking and rolling tonight. All right, final news piece. Following a successful crowdfunding run, which Pleas Publishing is releasing their Dungeon Crawl Classics adventure, Pirates of the Goblin River. And I've got the lowdown. A high-flying eruption of pirate action. Tracking stolen weapon shipments to a shady swampside town, the characters are ensnared in an explosive tangle of revenge, treachery, and dark magic. A floating hotel and gruesome grotto are the setting for this bloody stew of pirate stories featuring mead hall massacres, murderous sirens, and swashbuckling action by the bucket. Woven from tales found in centuries of pirate tales, from the Odyssey to the Count of Monte Cristo, Pirates of the Goblin River blends familiar elements in a thrilling new way. It pits the characters against a pirate crew that's practically a rival adventuring band, confronts them with pirate-themed puzzles, and challenges them with aquatic monsters and menaces. This is a level 2 adventure, and Pirates of the Goblin River has everything your party could want in a tour of classic pirate tales. From sirens to swinging on chandeliers and ropes, cursed treasure chests to tavern battles, its traditional themes and motifs continue to immerse players in a classic setting, continuing the adventure path, A Tale of Two Sisters, from which Pleas Publishing. Now, you can get the 27-page PDF right now over at Drive-Thru RPG for $4.99. And Pete Stracklich says they backed this Pirates of the Goblin River adventure. You might also notice We have got some artwork from Dungeon Crawl Classics regular. I want to say it's William McCausland. I think that's how his name is pronounced. And these maps look pretty nice. Kind of right along with, our kind of Dungeon Crawl Classics maps that we see in official Goodman Games adventures, which I happen to be a big fan in that sort of 3D aspect. So this looks pretty nice, pretty sweet. And come on, $4.99. Jeez, it's not like you're breaking the bank to pick it up. All right, that is it for tonight's news segment. Of course, I was just talking about Drive-Thru RPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to visit Drive-Thru RPG, Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, what have you, please stop by thegaminggang.com first, click on one of our banner ads, and if you happen to make a purchase, I will get 5% of that sale. And all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do add up and help keep thegaminggang.com around. Also, if you like this video, if you like the video, if you dig the channel, if you find thegaminggang.com to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, swing on over to paypal.me/thegaminggang to make a small donation. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. Oh, that's wet. And there are some folks out there who pop by paypal.me and make not small donations, such as our good friends, the Madman, Joshua Edwards, Kevin King, Agile Monk, just to name a few of the most recent people to pop on by. So big thank you to those out there who use the banner ads and or stop by paypal.me/thegaminggang. It is much appreciated. So we're going to get into the AMA in just a couple of moments. A few things I want to mention before we kind of move along. Number one, I am going to bust out the weekly game sales for the Gaming Gang, and I am going to roll that out tomorrow. So you will have from Friday to Thursday, if you would like to purchase. I'm going to have 10 items at a time, and there'll be role-playing games, there'll be board games, should be some miniatures or games which have miniatures as well. I'm only going to do 10 a week, just simply because I don't want to be overwhelmed having to ship stuff out. Like sometimes I am when I do game sales and stuff. And what I will do is I will have 10 items each week, and that will be your shot at purchasing those. And they will not return again. So they will not be available for sale by way of thegaminggang.com again. And do want to mention, one of the items I've got is the second edition of the Doctor Who role-playing game, or Doctor Who, the role-playing game. So I did review this, and I ended up with like, what 2 extra copies, I think? So this is in pristine condition. In fact, everything that I sell is in pristine condition. If it is not, I notify you of that right up front. It's like there's one book that I'm going to have on this week's sale that has a ding on the spine, which I think you'll even be able to see in the photograph. So anyway, just wanted to float that out because I have had people ask, hey, how come you haven't done a sale in a long time? No reason, really. Just hadn't gotten around to it. So I am going to address that because I know there are folks out there who, if I do this close to like the holidays, the winter holidays, they pick up some stuff as gifts for the gamers in their lives, which is fine. It's cool with me. Other thing I want to mention is our next live show, which will be October 1st, is going to mark the 14th anniversary of the gaminggang.com going live. And what I mean by that is on September 1st of 2010, my best friend Elliot Miller and I started posting stuff on the gaminggang.com, but we didn't tell anybody we were around because we wanted to make sure that we had content on the website when we finally decided to go live. So I think when we went live, we probably already had maybe 40 articles. We had some written reviews and things like that. So when we went live, people were like, they didn't realize we'd only been around for a month. They were kind of like, oh, how come I never heard of you guys before? Where have you been hiding? And it was all just a cunning plan. Because, a lot of people out there, they'll start a website, they'll have 1 or 2 articles, and then they're like telling everybody, oh, you got to check out my website. And it's like, oh, okay, so there's 1 or 2 articles. Yeah. Really not a lot of incentive to come back unless, you're related to that person or friend. So we made sure that it looked like, oh, wow, yeah, these guys have been around for a while. What's going on here? Anyway, regardless, on October 1st show, there will be giveaways to celebrate the 14th anniversary of thegaminggang.com going live. But there is a catch. You must be watching live and able to win. Dun, dun, dun. Just pointing it out. Just letting you know. So that will be, I think it's next Tuesday is the 1st. Now I'm going to double check my calendar. Yes, it is. Otherwise, I'd look like a real idiot. Yeah, Tuesday, October 1st. And it's actually like October 2nd. No, it is October 1st. So mark your calendars. There shall be giveaways. Maybe role-playing stuff, PDFs and that. But you got to be watching live to be able to win. All righty. So we're going to move on into the September AMA as well as the finale of Role-Playing Games Story Time in just a few moments. But first, I think it's time for a brief intermission. If this will flip on over.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
Baseball Joe was a slugger, He made all the pitchers cry. He was frank to admit the reason he hit was Toddy.
Toddy.
That's the drink for me.
Toddy.
Try it, Pop, and see.
Toddy.
Man, oh man, that's the brand new chocolate malt in a can.
Yes, sirree. Try Toddy and you'll agree. Toddy is as delicious as the finest tasting soda fountain malted you ever had. Ice cold or steaming hot. Ask for Toddy.
Delicious.
On sale now at our snack bar.
This must be the bad guy's hideout.
The master of deductive reasoning.
Okay, listen up. The movie starts at 7:30. We walk in late, smoking, talking, and throwing trash.
That's real offensive. The people in the theater will be disgusted.
So that's the plan. They're going to try to ruin the movie for everyone else.
What are we gonna do?
I've been saving a special Bigfoot trick for just such an occasion. Aha! It's the old saving a special trick. Come on, make way.
Last door on the left.
Oh, this is it. Okay, we're here. You can start the movie. What's this? This is your theater. You don't think they'd let you in with the grown-ups, do you?
Bigfoot, what are you doing here?
Stamping out abominable behavior in movie theaters.
Another fine mess.
Enjoy the show, guys.
Yeah.
over. You've been ripped by the best. Now the action film of the year. All new, totally different. Superman Chu, master of Kung Fu. He's super cool. Super quick. Super deadly. Superman Chu. His body a lethal weapon capable of destroying anything and anyone who gets in his way. Action to blow your mind. Blows to leave you breathless. Kicks defying physical limitations. Superman Chu, master of Kung Fu.
You think I have such a short life?
That I don't know. But you know what they say. Courage makes heroes.
They sent their best men to get him, but their best was not good enough to tangle with Superman Chu. If you haven't seen this kind of action film before, you can't afford to miss this one. Even if you've seen the others, you owe it to yourself to see the best. Superman Chu, master of Kung Fu. See it to believe your eyes. From Capitol Productions, rated R for righteous.
Superman Chu. I see Gluin RX is going to race on out to their video rental store to pick that up, to check that out. Pretty funny. Pretty funny. I got a kick out of, gosh, in the first few seconds of that trailer, Superman Chu takes a swing at a guy, and you can see his fist doesn't come within 2 feet of the actor, and the actor goes flying. I'm like, okay, all righty. Jeez. All right, we've got a few more people popping on into chat. Let's see. Agile Monk is with us, good friend of the show. And TCC is also hanging with the gang. I think I've said hello to everybody. So the Madman says, just wait for the next in the series, Spider-Man Chu and Iron Man Chu. And Manchu Thing. Chris Lundgren says that movie is a no for them. So Gluin RX says, yeah, they'll drive to that last remaining blockbuster. I have been past that last remaining blockbuster. If it's still in Bend, if it's in Bend, Oregon, I actually, if you follow the show, you know, I used to deliver mainly RVs around the country, usually out to the West Coast. And there were a few times that I actually delivered some Winnebagos to Bend, Oregon, which is just beautiful country, beautiful forested area in that. And I'll never forget, I'm driving, it's late. It's probably about 11:30, maybe midnight. And I'm driving, and Bend is not a big city by any stretch. And I'm driving, and I see a Blockbuster sign. I was like, what? It's like, seriously? You know, it was lit up. And it was closed, but the sign and the Blockbuster itself were lit. And I was like, oh my God. There's still a Blockbuster? And at that point in time, I think there were 3. That one, there was another one in Alaska and a third one someplace else. But I believe Bend, Oregon is the last remaining Blockbuster store. And I drove past it a few times. Never went in it, but I did drive past it. I have seen it, and it just looks like a Blockbuster. Doesn't look like anything different, just looks like a Blockbuster. So we're going to get into our AMA. I do see TCC has a question. I will get to that in a moment because I want to tackle some of the questions that people have sent in and people have asked before, which I don't necessarily get a chance to see every question that rolls by. So a lot of times I miss stuff. So sometimes I'll kind of rewatch a little bit of the AMA videos to see what I may have missed. So Kachansky says, thanks for such an honest review of the Order of the Stone, even though the copy was provided to you by Chaosium. That never enters into the equation as far as my reviews. I tell people right up front that I received it as a review copy, and that's it. I don't take cash or anything else outside of a review copy of something in order to do a review. And I tell you straight up what I think of something. And most publishers appreciate that. So they said it's quite rare these days and speaks volumes about your judgment and independence. Yeah, I am certainly independent, and I am not everyone's cup of tea either. So, in fact, there are a few people who are kind of pushing back on the review. One of the things I had mentioned is it's a 3-chapter campaign. It's not horrible. It's not terrible. It's probably my least favorite Call of Cthulhu release in the past 5 years, probably, I would say. It feels rushed. Check out the review if you're interested. But there's a third final chapter, a final adventure, and part of it takes place at a kids' summer camp. And it's supposed to be for boys and girls, for teenage boys and girls. And right when I read that, because I had the PDF before I had the physical book, because the physical book showed up yesterday. So within about 20 minutes of the book showing up, I was shooting the review because I already had the PDF. So I had read the PDF. So I'd be ready when the book arrived, because I was expecting the book before release day. But I think the company that, produces the book was running late or whatever. I think it's like Bang Printing or something like that. So anyway, I thought, wait a second. Who would have co-ed summer camps for boys and girls who are teenagers? I'm like, no. So I actually looked it up. And for the most part, because this takes place in the 1920s, that was not a thing. And I've had people pushing back, oh, yeah, there were. Oh, yes, there were. One person said, oh, because it's in Massachusetts where it takes place, at least this chapter. And they said, yeah, even in New York in 1891, they had co-ed summer camps at this one specific place. And I was like, really? So I went and took a peek. And from what I garnered was they didn't do co-ed, but in 1891, they actually introduced a camp for girls. So having summer camps that offered a summer camp for boys and girls does not mean it was co-ed. So I've got people arguing with me. Oh, yeah. Now it's possible there were. I don't know. I did a little bit of research and it did not look like that was the case. But I kind of get the feeling that some of these people pushing back on it are the typical, well, I don't know, but that doesn't sound right to me, so I'm going to argue with you. Right? So anyway, so I appreciate you appreciating the review, but that's pretty much it, right? That's pretty much it. That's how I operate. I tell you what I think. And some people like that. Some people don't. Some people like some things that I say, and other people are like, the same people are like, oh, but I don't like that. So that happens. Okay. So, a couple of questions that have been asked in the past or have been sent in that I want to tackle. One of them, actually, I think was asked during a previous AMA, and I have gotten a couple of emails over maybe the past month or so asking me, have I ever designed a game? And am I interested in designing a game, or have I ever been interested in designing a game? I have done play testing. Usually I just tell people don't bother putting my name in as a play tester. I don't need that. I have helped on some designs of games that got published. Once again, I mean, I didn't ask for any. So I wasn't like, oh, hey, put me down as the developer or anything like that. I have provided ideas for some of my designer friends that they have incorporated into games. And there have been a few games that I have worked almost as a co-designer on. Okay, I'll give you an example. One of them was a war game, and my friend John Welsh was kicking it around. And John Welsh did game designs for Victory Point Games back in the day. He was kind of in charge of their States of Siege line. He was like their developer for it. He had kind of made his name in computer games. And if I remember correctly, he had designed a CD of, I want to say it was Steel Panthers, was an SSI war game. He had designed a CD full of scenarios and things like that. So he was looking to design a 1980s war game, but it was going to be card driven. So I remember meeting up with him. Once again, this is when I was delivering RVs around the country, and I was delivering to the city that he lived in California. And we sat down, we were talking, and he was trying to come up with how he could make the cards. How could he fit enough action onto the cards when he only had so many cards that he could include in the game? Because it was going to be through Victory Point Games. And at that point in time, Victory Point Games was still doing all the, like the Ziploc bag games and stuff like that. And we kind of kicked it around, and I had told him that easiest way to get the most real estate and get the most usage out of, I think he had 30 cards that he could utilize. I said, make one half of the card for the Axis and the other half of the card for the Allies. There you go. I was like, you can double up. And we kind of talked about different things. And, but unfortunately, he never went forward with that design. We did talk about a game that was in the Coin series for GMT Games that he had been working on, and I was giving him a hand with that, and that did not come to fruition. And then I had an idea, and I would still be interested in pursuing this. It is, I don't want to give away too much of it, because then somebody else is going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, now, yeah, I'll do it. So it's like, but I mean, leaving me out of the equation. So it would be a melee game for the most part. So if you are familiar in any way, shape, or form with the old Yaquinto Game Company, one of their games was called Swashbuckler. And the players, it was Musketeers versus, the Cardinals men, right? So it was a fighting game. It was a melee game. And, you could swing on chandeliers and you could smash mugs into people's faces, stuff like that. So John had been working on an homage to it for Gene Billingsley at GMT Games, because Gene had said, oh, hey, yeah, I always liked that game. And So anyway, this was at Consim World, and John said, "Hey Jeff, do me a favor, play this." I said, "Okay, all right, cool." So I did, and I got to be honest, I was like, And I had Swashbuckler, and Swashbuckler is one of those games, as Beat Cafe says, Swashbuckler is awesome. Swashbuckler to me, no offense to Beat Cafe, right, is one of those games that it's the rose-colored glasses of nostalgia, where it's like the game itself is better thinking back to it than actually putting it in front of you and playing it. Prime example of that is when I went and I bought a copy of Gunslinger, which was an old Avalon Hill game, and it was unpunched and everything. It wasn't in shrink, but it was unpunched. And I paid a decent price for it. But I had remembered it being really good. And then I got it, opened it up, started reading it, and I was like, what am I, out of my fucking mind? It says case point, rules. And I was like, I mean, I ended up selling it for a profit later on down the line. Oh no, you know what I did? I think I donated it to a charity auction. I'm trying to remember. I think that might have been what I did. But it was like, yeah. But anyway, so the game was not going to be Musketeers and the Cardinals men. It was something else, and it was far more detailed than Swashbuckler. But it was going to, because Swashbuckler was like a programmed action game where you plotted out what your character was going to do, and then so there were a lot of times, a lot of turns that nothing would really happen because you're moving this way and somebody's moving the other way and things like that. So it was going to be designed to work around that. And it was going to be fantastical. And it was, I'll share a little more of the theme of it. So it was going to be anthropomorphic animals, which is funny because I've said in the past, as far as like role-playing games go, I'm not really keen on anthropomorphic animals in fantasy role-playing games and stuff. And what I mean by that is I don't want like humans and elves and dwarves and talking bipedal cats and dogs. But if that is the setting without humans, right? So if you think about like the Robin Hood from Disney, right? Where Robin Hood's a fox, I think, right? Isn't he a fox in it? It's been decades since I saw that. I have no problem with that. So what it was going to be is it was going to be D-list heroes and rogues, fighting in a tavern. And it was going to have two maps, two boards, essentially. One, the inside of the tavern, flip it over, and it's the outside of the tavern. And you would have different factions of like 4 or 5 characters. And they would all be thematically like reptiles, water mammals, stuff like that. But they were all going to be kind of not necessarily sad sacks, but sort of adventurers who have a far more inflated, like they think they're far more, famous and heroic than they really are. So each one would have like some sort of silly kind of fumble aspect to them. So yeah, that's what it was. And we were actually banging that around pretty good. And sadly, if I had the ability to work with somebody who was a game designer and who would be interested in something like that, And of course, we would aim for miniatures, but you could do it with standees easy. I would still pursue that. I would. Something else is I also own the rights to Knights and Magic, which is an old heritage miniatures or heritage models, I think is what they were known as, from the 1980s. It's a fantasy war game, miniatures game, but you can use it fantasy. You could also use it just historically as well, so you can get rid of the fantasy elements. And it was not a big seller by any stretch, but we played it. So once again, sense of nostalgia. And it's actually a pretty decent game. Just didn't catch on. That's all. All right. So that was one of the questions. Other question is, and somebody actually asked a question that's kind of piggybacks on this. And it was, do I own any first edition D&D books? No, I don't have any. None. I have the core books. Well, I have up to, what is it? Unearthed Arcana. So I've got that. So that was a question. What is my favorite edition of Dungeons and Dragons? Got to be very honest. I really didn't mess around with second through fourth because I had already moved on. I mean, really, early in AD&D, we had moved on to Call of Cthulhu and other role-playing games. So we really didn't play D&D. And like I said before, I don't hate 5e. I think 5e is clunky. I think for all the rules and that are in the book, there's still far too much that's just kind of left up to the dungeon master to decide or figure out. And you would think by this point in time, they would just have kind of cleaned that up. So I would say my favorite edition of Dungeons and Dragons would be AD&D. I have not checked out, what is it? B, E, C, M, D, E, F, G. People have told me I should check it out. I mean, I had the Holmes edition, the box that came out with that. So yes, I have had that. But yeah, I would say, once again, I was never a big AD&D guy. I had a lot of modules. I used to pick up modules a lot. But then again, if you follow the show, you already know that I'm somebody who I have owned hundreds of role-playing game titles without ever running them. I read them, but I haven't run them. Of course, and I do reviews of it. So let's move on to some of the questions here. What's the best solo, old school, Renaissance role-playing game that has its own adventures? I have to be very honest. I'm not overly familiar with solo RPGs. Some of them that I've run across seem more like journaling games than anything else. Not exactly jumping out at me as far as that goes. A lot of people swear by, isn't it For Against the Darkness? And then I know there are some offshoots to that, like there's the Cthulhu mythos. But in it, I know it's got tons and tons of supplements out there. So that would be a good guess. Bradley Thorpe is with us in chat. Can I tell them if the Pathfinder bestiary is good source material? No, I refuse to tell you. You can figure it out yourself. Next up, no. Yeah, it's good. I like it. I like Pathfinder. I like Pathfinder 2nd edition. I'll be the first to point out, I think I saw all of one book for 1st edition Pathfinder, and that was late in its run. I think it was the occult book that Paizo Inc. gave me a copy of at Gen Con to review. And I was sort of like, but I have absolutely no reference here because I don't have any Pathfinder stuff. But yeah, I like it. I think it's pretty good. I I I like the fact that we've got the 3 action economy in Pathfinder, and how things play out with that is that your characters, your player characters, and your NPCs and your creatures and monsters and things like that, they have different abilities. And I like that the 3 action economy allows for the players and the game master to have choices that they can kind of easily turn to, probably easier for the game master than players, really. But a lot of times it's sort of like, as a game master, and let's say most likely like a fantasy role-playing game where you've got all these different creatures and monsters and stuff, they all have different abilities and stuff like that. It's not always apparent when they would use those abilities. I say this all the time. There is a reason why the monsters know what they're doing, and it's follow-up more. The monsters know what they're doing is because it's not clear enough in the monster manual how to use the entries in the monster manual. With the bestiary for Pathfinder, I find that that's not necessarily the case, because you see what actions are available, what they cost as far as out of the 3 actions. Dragonbane also has, where there are a few fantasy role-playing games where the game master actually rolls a die to see what the monster does. I kind of like that. I think that's kind of cool. Although it's possible that you could go on a streak where you just keep rolling the same number, so the monster keeps doing the same thing. But yeah, I would say I like it better than the monster manual. Not that I hate the monster manual. The monster manual is fine. But D&D stat blocks take some, what translation, I guess we'll say. You look at a stat block and it's not always apparent how you might utilize those entries. Bradley Thorpe asks if I reviewed the Dark Crystal role-playing game. I have not. I have not reviewed it. I have not seen it. So, no clue. Let's see. Do I have the maps for a campaign builder, castles, and crowns? Asks Warren Rawlings. Welcome to chat. Yes. In fact, if you take a look at my first look at castles and crowns, I include a first look at the maps. So I want to say it's probably about the last 5 minutes of the video. So I do share a peek at those dozen maps. I will have a review for Castles and Crowns in the not too distant future. So Gloomon RX says co-ed scout summer camps are a thing now. Oh yeah, I mean co-ed summer camps have been a thing probably since the 50s, 60s. It's just before that. And the funny thing is, somebody said, "Oh, you're nitpicking with the summer camp," and it's possible. It's possible I was, but the thing is, the book is just full of little things like that are like, really, kind of leave you scratching your head. And I would definitely be like changing if I were going to run that campaign. Chris Lundgren asks, what's the most complicated game I ever owned and played and still play? Well, still play. I don't tend to play a lot of things anymore that are overly complex. And the reason behind that is, for one, I don't really want that sort of complexity, but I can't get anybody else to even approach a game of, say, the complexity of a Third Reich or an Advanced Squad Leader. So I would say probably the most complicated game I ever owned and played would be, if I think about it, Advanced Squad Leader, which I do not own any longer. I haven't owned it in actually quite a long time. I would say that maybe Third Reich, because Third Reich was relatively complex. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with Advanced Squad Leader. I believe that would be it. Tessie Trekkie says they have massively fond memories of the huge War of the Ring war game. I had that. Still thinks it's an incredible piece of design and gameplay achievement, but I can't be arsed to play that long a game these days. Just like Elliot's always trying to get me to play the Ares games, War of the Ring, which I have not actually played. Because first of all, the first edition, the map was too small. There was not enough real estate on that game board for you to fit the units in. And now I don't, simply because it takes forever to set up. Just like Elliot's, one day I popped over to Elliot's and we were going to play some games and he wanted to play the new edition of Robinson Crusoe. I was like, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. And he had to set it up ahead of time. And he told me that the setup was like 2 hours. Now, I'm sure he was distracted by other things as he was setting up. But I mean, right there, you're starting to get into like Arkham horror territory where the setup and breakdown takes longer than actually playing it. Agile Monk points out The Longest Day, that was a monster, still have it. That was a big ass game. We always jokingly referred to it as the longest day of gaming. Chris Lugner also asks, what game in miniatures have I ever went and bought a ton of and no longer play, but still have a bunch? I don't have any. I don't have anything that I went and bought and I played a lot of, and I still have. Now, I did go and I bought a lot of, back when it was Epic, I had a lot of Warhammer 40K Epic. I also had a good amount of Games Workshop miniatures. I didn't necessarily game with a lot of them. I tended to paint them, but those were sold long ago. I also had over, if I remember correctly, the count was 2,500 painted 15 millimeter American Civil War, infantry, cavalry, artillery, casualty markers, because we used to play a lot of Fire and Fury. And then I sold that collection at Gen Con. I brought them up to Milwaukee and sold them at Gen Con for a lot. In fact, they stopped the auction to point out that they had something that was coming up in the next half hour that was something that you almost never saw at the Gen Con auctions. And people went up and they were all checking it out. And yeah, I did pretty well on that. I made almost $1 a miniature, almost. And you figure those were 15 millimeter, right? There were a bunch of Old Glories and a few other miniature makers mixed in. And I used to go to Emperor's Headquarters, which was on Irving Park Road in Chicago. I didn't live far from it. And that was a place I used to go to every Saturday to blow money. W4 asks, did I see the amazing triple play by the Padres to shut out the Dodgers? Yes, I did. Did not see it live, but I did see it. Speaking of baseball, I did want to mention something. I hadn't said anything earlier about this because I didn't want to jinx them, but good luck to the Tigers. I'm assuming the madman is a Tigers fan. Keep my fingers crossed that they hang on to that wild card spot. And they've got the punching bag Chicago White Sox coming up to Detroit to finish off the season. Your boys need to get them one more loss so they can be the all-time biggest losers. William Hell His Ice is with me asking, have I been to the Noble Knight store? I have not. I have considered it. Like, to be honest, if I actually went up to Gamehole Con, which I really want to go, but just can't justify the expense going by myself, and doing interviews solo is a pain in the ass. It really is. I got to drag around a tripod and crap like that. Man says, my Tigers may actually make the playoffs. I actually work for the owners of the team. Very nice. Very cool. Agile Monk says they've got hundreds and hundreds of Old Glory 15mm Civil War Fire and Fury. Yes. I used to beat the shit out of my friend Ed playing Fire and Fury. I always played the Union, and he always played Confederates. And I mean, there'd be times where it's like, he's going to win. And then, no. The dice went cold. Glumin RX asks, what's the most interesting game I've reviewed that never made it to the table? You got to keep in mind, a lot of the role-playing games that I'll review, they don't get run. And I know there are people who whinge about, how can you review something you haven't run it? And I've been running role-playing games for over 4 decades. You think I can't figure out how a game plays by reading the book? And honestly, if I was sort of like, I don't know how this will play at the table, I would tell you that in the review. I would not just, glance past that and be like, I'm not going to say nothing. But there are loads of games that were really interesting that just don't get run as far as role-playing games and stuff like that. As far as board games, I have to play a board game at least 3 times before it gets a review. So kind of shifted away from board games just because it's so difficult to get together with any of the gang to play stuff. So that's a reason why you don't see as many board game reviews. It's not that I've suddenly, lost my interest in board games. No, not at all. It's just, I don't want to play a game once and then try to do a review of it because I have encountered in the past, thankfully, I did not go ahead with the review. I made sure to play the games another time or 2 where we were playing the game wrong. And one of them that jumps right to mind was Cargo Noir, which was from Days of Wonder. And we played it, and I thought, wow, this game is crap. I'm like, why did they even make this? And then I realized we played it a second time, and I had the same impression. And I was like, you know what? This is just going to get a negative review. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to go take a deep dive into these rules one more time. And then I realized there was something relatively critical to the game that I had missed. So it was a good thing that I had held off on doing the review. Otherwise, I would probably given it like a 3 out of 10. All right. Anyway, so that is it for the AMA, because I do want to wrap up the role-playing game story time. And as I mentioned before, I mentioned this on last night's show, my best friend Elliot Miller took part in this campaign. It was Massive Nyarlathotep back when it came out. And he does not remember how this story ends. So if you've been watching the past couple of weeks, I've been sharing a story about just a little side deal that was going on in Massive Nyarlathotep. And kind of the point of the story is how you can just pull things out of the air, pull things out of a hat or a location on your body, and they become a major plot point to a role-playing game campaign. And it's something that is not in a published adventure. It's not something that you've planned out in a homebrew. It just pops up and just has a life of its own. So I talked about early on in the Massive Nyarlathotep campaign for Call of Cthulhu, the three guys. So I had three players. So I had my best friend, Elliot Miller, my friend, Ed Ruprecht, and Elliot's nephew, Paul Miller, who was our friend as well. So those were my investigators. And then I would kind of bulk the investigators up with some NPCs from time to time. So anyway, they try to steal these books, and they steal the books. And one of the NPCs who's with them is a private investigator, and he dies grotesquely. And Paul's character leaves the body at the side of the road, and they take off. So that was, I told you about that story, the first installment. And then the character was a private investigator named Mike McCormick. And he was just named after a kid we went to school with. And it didn't mean anything. It's just, I needed a name. I just used that name. So then last week I talked about how Mike returns as a zombie hunting the player characters. And for some strange reason, he's fixated on Elliot's character. Even though it was Paul's character is just like, leaving him in a ditch on the side of the road. But the NPC had been friends with Elliot's character, not Paul's character or Ed's character. So if you're familiar with Massive Nyarlathotep, from New York, the adventure moves, well, it could go in a variety of different ways, but normally, the way the clues are laid out, the player characters will go to London. As Matthew Blackwell joins us in chat. And they learn more stuff and the campaign, expands. But there are also a couple of red herrings that are they play relatively major roles in the campaign, especially the first edition of the campaign, even though they are not affiliated with what's going on as far as the overall story arc of the campaign. So anyway, the one involves these attacks that are taking place in a rural area of England, and a small village in England's going to be terrorized by these animal attacks. So on the ship crossing the ocean to go to England, Zombie Mike became sort of this catalyst to the player characters, that he was like always on their tail. And they would just get away from Zombie Mike. We didn't refer to him as Zombie Mike, but I call him Zombie Mike. Just by the skin of their teeth. So just like when they were getting ready to disembark from the ship, and they weren't on like a luxury liner or anything like that. They were actually on cargo ship, because back in the day, even today, cargo ships would have passenger berths. So there was the ability to travel on, on cargo ships, which would save you a lot of money, although you would tend to take longer to get to your destination than an ocean liner would. So the madman said red herrings are great battered and fried with little cocktail sauce. So when they were disembarking or getting ready to disembark, it was night. And I used to always throw out, Zombie Mike would call out Anthony, because that was Elliot's character's first name. And of course, whenever I do that, everybody around the table, they'd be like, oh, shit. Because of what had happened that I talked about last week's adventure, where Zombie Mike actually killed all of them. And it turned out it was a dream. And then after they've woken up from having this dream, the exact same thing that happened in the dream starts happening. And they all go, racing out and down a fire escape from their hotel room as Zombie Mike comes blasting through the door. So he's always on their tail. So they end up in this village, and the way it's written in Massive Nyarlathotep is that it's a werewolf, and it is a family curse that cursed the firstborn son of this family because they burned a witch. So the witch cursed the family. And the way it's presented, as far as I remember now, and it may have changed as far as the newest edition. I don't think it has, though. I don't remember it changing. There's no way to cure this curse. There's no way to stop the curse except to kill the werewolf or the person who is the werewolf. So Elliot and Paul and Ed are investigating this village, and they meet the lord of the manor, and they're invited to dine at the manor, and so on and so forth. So they're introduced to the lord and their family, and the son and the daughter, and everybody thinks it's the son is up to something. He's very, very shady and things like that. So I decided I was going to flip the script from what was presented in the adventure, and it wasn't going to be the son who was cursed. It was going to be the daughter who was cursed. So Elliot's character starts romancing the daughter, and he's coming back to the inn that they're staying at because they think somehow this is all connected to the overall story arc, even though it's not. So Elliot starts courting the daughter, and he's coming back from their manor house. It's a castle or something, whatever. And it's nighttime. The moon is full. He's walking through the village, and he keeps hearing this kind of like scuttling above him. And he hears like, and then silence, and then thunk. And then he's looking around. He can't see anything. So he starts walking faster, and the sound gets faster. So what's actually going on is the werewolf is stalking him, jumping from house to house, building to building, following him along. So he gets to the inn, and he gets attacked by the werewolf. And he's nearly killed, but they're able to chase off the werewolf. So Elliot ends up going and now he's under the care of the doctor, the town doctor. So of course the town doctor, you know, in a small village or whatever, you wouldn't have a hospital. You would have the doctor who would have a room or two with a bed or beds in it. And that's where, you know, a patient would be cared for until they were, you know, able to be transported to, you know, a hospital or whatever. So, so Ed and Paul are very concerned because Elliot's character has been attacked by a werewolf. So doesn't that mean that Elliot's going to turn into a werewolf? So unbeknownst to Elliot, I forget what story they come up with to tell the doctor, but the doctor ends up strapping Elliot's character down to the bed. And that was that night, right? So during the day, Paul and Ed are investigating what's going on, and they talk to the village priest, and the village priest is able to share the story about the witch who was burned. And even though there was no way for this curse to be lifted, I figured, okay, I'm going to do it where the witch's bones were, you know, buried in a cave, and they just need to go, like, actually bury her in consecrated ground, and the curse goes away, whatever, you know. So I'm thinking, yeah, to me, it was just going to be a better story that way, not be like, oh, typical Call of Cthulhu sort of thing. Nothing he can do about it. Guess you just got to kill him or burn the place to the ground or both. So anyway, so they've learned this. So they start trying to find out where this cave is. And then they learn where the cave is. Then they go back, they talk to the doctor, and they tell the doctor that, hey, you need to strap him down. And it wasn't like, oh, he's going to turn into a werewolf. It was more like they had said something about like he has seizures or whatever. Yeah, come on. This is 40 some years ago. I don't remember exactly. So what I used to do, and this is something that I still try to do, is when I've got a group and they split up, I will have whatever the first group or second group is, I will have them leave the room. And then I will run what's going on with the other group or person, what have you, for about 5 minutes. I always make sure that it's no more than 5 minutes because I don't want people to get antsy. And then I'll be like, okay, send them in. And I was doing that during this because, for one, Elliot's not sure if he's going to turn into a werewolf himself, right? Even though he's unconscious and there's nothing he can do. So anyways, he wakes up and he's strapped to this bed. He can't move. He's stuck. That's it. That's all, all he could do is just sit there. And he's watching the moon rise and the moon light coming through the window, and it's just kind of creeping up the bed because he's concerned that, when the moonlight hits him, he's going to turn into a werewolf. So I have him leave and I have Ed and Paul come back in. So Paul and Ed find the cave and they've got a lantern and they go in there and they're looking around in the cave and they find bones, and that is human remains. And Paul would always do like oddball stuff. So Paul kicks the bones. So of course I'm like, oh, okay. So I start having the skeleton reassembling. And it's like taking form and flesh is forming. It's going to be the witch, So then I'm like, okay. So I said, send Chip back in. If you follow the show, you know, everybody used to call Elliot Chip when we were kids. And it's okay, send him back in. You guys leave. So Elliot's awake and he's watching the moonlight. The moonlight hits his face and nothing happens. And he's like, phew. So the door opens and Elliot sees the doctor and he says, hey, you know, could you, unstrap me from the bed and whatever? And the doctor, in Zombie Mike's voice, says something along the lines of, no, I've got you exactly where I want you. And then he peels this bloody face off and it's the doctor's face. He's killed the doctor and ripped his face off and slapped it on. I don't know why. Come on, you know, you roll with these things, right? So he's like, oh, shit. So I'm like, okay, go send Ed and Paul back in. So Ed and Paul come back in and the witch is standing there in front of them and she casts some sort of hex and they go flying and the lantern smashes against, you know, the wall of the cave and goes out. Now they're in pitch darkness. And all of a sudden they feel these like hands gripping them from like the ground, like the ground's, the dirt is, you know, coming to life and, you know, grabbing at them. So, forget, somehow there's a cave in. So they're trapped in the cave and the witch is coming for them. And then of course it's back to, all right, send Chip back in. So Mike the Zombie is gloating over Elliot and telling him about what, you know, what he's going to do to him and how he's going to eat his spleen and, you know, things like that. And he goes to start strangling Elliot. And all of a sudden the window shatters and the werewolf comes flying in. And in that moment, Elliot realizes that the werewolf is a female. It's like, and the werewolf and Zombie Mike start battling it out. And of course, you know, just imagine, you know, it's a movie. You've got, you know, the victim strapped to the bed and they're fighting on top of them and all this other stuff. So of course I have Ed and Paul come back in and, oh, I remember they had something that they had a spell that they would read. That's what it was. It was, I think it was a prayer that they needed to read to put the witch's soul to rest or whatever. And of course, you know, they don't have any light. So they light a match and they're trying to read it. And the matches keep going out because they're like all, you know, so they finally read it. And I have them leave and Elliot comes back in and the werewolf tears Zombie Mike's head off. And Zombie Mike is done for. He's gone. He's now, you know, bought the farm. And the werewolf then turns on Elliot and the werewolf's going to kill Elliot. And then at the moment that Ed and Paul read the prayer, she turns back into the daughter and the curse is broken. And that was how Zombie Mike came to an end. But yeah, you know, some things you just roll with. Like I said, it was just something that it was a fumble roll, right? If you watched the first part of this, Zombie Mike came about because he was an NPC helping break into the mansion to steal these arcane books. And the fence around the mansion had like those spikes on it, and slipped and impaled himself. Then Paul decided they were just going to leave the body on the side of the road. But yeah, it was just kind of goofy. So yes, so that is the yeah. So Cleveland RX says, first thing a teenage role player would notice, the werewolf was a female. Mammoth says they had a dungeon master that would increase experience points by 2 for each character that split from the party. 4 characters split, XP times 4. We got into a lot of trouble. Actually, times 8. All right. So there you have it. Little goofy story time. You know, and I think part of the point of this story time was to show that it's never the big plot points that you're all ready for that become really the most memorable moments of role-playing games. It's always just weird stuff that came out of nowhere. Like I talked about previously, I was trying to run Massive Nyarlathotep, the newest edition from for 7th edition Call of Cthulhu, with the gang, including Elliot, because I knew Elliot wouldn't remember the stuff from the campaign, because all of the things he remembers are from things that just were pulled out of a hat, or out of my ass, as I like to say. It's like, oh yeah, the Indiana Jones chase with the truck and the explosives and the cultists. That wasn't in it. It was just, okay, just rolling with it. So that's one of the things that I think is funny. And the other aspect of story time here is just to kind of share how you can approach running role-playing games a little bit different than other people do at their game tables. So, I mean, I guarantee you a lot of game masters out there do not want their party splitting up and then having to screw around with back and forth. All right, send them in. Okay, come on in. I don't mind that. I like to, I'll be the first to point out, I don't want my players to just suddenly go off on little side adventures, which is something that Elliot's nephew, Paul, did quite often, especially early on when he was like 12, 13. He got better with age as far as, role-playing games and stuff. So I'm not looking forward to that kind of stuff. But when it like increases the tension level, yeah, I'm all for that. I am all for that. All right. So that is it for this time out. Don't forget, tune in on Tuesday, October 1st. Not only will I start kicking off Old School October, but we will be celebrating the 14th anniversary of the GamingGang.com going live. There will be giveaways, and you have to be watching live in order to win. So keep that in mind. All right, so if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It'll not only let you know when the Dispatch streams live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. It'll also inform you when I share other videos, such as the upcoming review for Broken Weave from Cubicle 7 Games, which will be up over the weekend. So be sure to check that out. You guys got spoiled. 4 videos to check out yesterday, well, including the dispatch. So don't be expecting that again anytime soon, but should have a handful of videos for you over the weekend to check out. Anyway, if you watch live, thank you very much. If you watched live and took part in chat, a bigger thank you, because not only do you keep me company, you also keep each other company while I'm rambling along telling you role-playing game stories. But of course, I know a lot of you out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Thank you very much for watching any of the over 2,000 videos here on the channel. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit gaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more you are not going to find here on YouTube. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you for watching. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend. And as always, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.